you just read, the caterpillars could not recognize themselves, that they could become butterflies in the future, but that's because they couldn't see all the baby steps that, let me put my video here. They couldn't see all the baby steps that were needed until they were able to reach that step. So it's also the same with us. So it's very difficult to kind of recognize a perfect spirit in a primitive spirit, but that's because there's so many baby steps until we get to become a perfect spirit. So right now, as we're in this world of, the planetary transition, it's that one little baby step that we're taking forward towards becoming perfect spirits. So it's a very beautiful story for us to remember that one day we will also all become butterflies. Let me go. So tonight I will be talking about the role of family in the planetary transition. My name is Katie Anderson. I think you guys all know me. And I will be basing the talk mostly on these 4 books. They're all in Portuguese. First is SOS Family. Next is Planetary Transition. Both of these are by Givaldo. And then we have The New Generation, also by Givaldo, that talks about crystal kids and indigo kids. And lastly, this one is by Illyrio, and he talks about parents and children. So all these books, besides the Spirits book and Genesis and the Gospel According to Spiritism, I will be using for our talk tonight. And I am dividing the talk into 3 different sections. The planetary transition, kind of what it is. The family circle, what that is. And then combining both of them together to show the importance and the role of the family in this planetary transition that we are going through right now. So the planetary transition, let's step back and think. What's out there besides the universe? I mean, besides us, the Earth. Is there anything else out there, or is it just us? There is a lot out there. Bruno, you have to talk?
A lot of planets.
A lot of planets. And a lot of things we can't even see, right? So NASA says on their site that there are 8 planets in our solar system, and there are 100 billion planets in our Milky Way galaxy, and 200 billion galaxies in the universe. And note that this is just what they approximate in the known universe. So imagine in the unknown universe. So there are a lot of planets out there, and there are a lot of spirits of different levels in all of these planets. So let's take a look. I have a video, a 2-minute video, and I'm going to make it a little bit quicker. That kind of zooms out from where we are up into the universe, and then it goes back, and then it also goes inside of our cells, which is not exactly part of it, but it's so interesting. I'm going to show you that part too. So let's look at this really cool video. Oops, go back. Oh, it went to the very end of my lecture for some reason. You get to see all the things I'm going to talk about. Okay, come on, play. I want to go faster, but I can't without clicking on my little. So here we are, going back from Silicon Valley, zooming out. Look how much there is. Imagine how many spirits there are in all this space. Now we're gonna go back into our body, which is just interesting, but not necessarily for the lecture itself. Okay, and then back to the woman in Silicon Valley. So it's so cool that it's here where we live, right? Hey, can you guys hear me again? Yes, okay. So in our Father's house, there are many mansions, which are many planets, many different levels of planets, according to what level, right, of spirit that we are, more advanced, less evolved. And so here in our solar system, we have 8 planets, and each planetary vortex moving in space around a common center, the sun, drags with it its own primitive worlds of exile, probation, regeneration, and happiness. Full screen there. So our own solar system has different, each planet is a home to different spirits of different advancements. And we have the 5 categories of worlds that we can read about more in the Gospel According to Spiritism and also the Spirits book. And they kind of give a general idea into 5 different categories. So I'm going to go over that quickly, but again, I invite you to go read more about it in the Gospel According to Spiritism. Primitive worlds are where some of the first reincarnations are. These worlds are very brute worlds, and the spirits there are just kind of in survival mode, okay? And then we go on to trials and expiations, which is where Earth is at, and we have a lot of trials and expiations. We have lots of challenges and difficulties that we are having to face in our daily lives. And then we go on to regeneration, which is where Earth is moving on to. And there we still have trials, but we have more of a rest. So we're able to focus more on progressing, and the trials, we still have trials, but they're a little bit less intense because there are not as many expiations. So it gets a little bit easier chance to rest as we work on ourselves. And then we go on to happy worlds where it's mostly good spirits, and they're still just progressing until they finally get into the 5th kanta world, which is the celestial worlds, where the spirits there are perfect. So that is our goal. And very interestingly, I found in the Spiritist magazine that you can find on kardecpedia.com, and there are spirits who go and describe which planets in our solar system are more advanced than the others. And remember, this is Spiritist view, it's not science view, okay? So very important to remember that difference there, because this is what spirits say. And so spirits, let me go here, click on my screen. Jupiter is the most advanced in this solar system, our solar system. They're in a happy world. And then next comes Uranus and Neptune in advance. And then Moon and Venus, then Mercury and Saturn, and then Earth, us, and then Mars is the most primitive here in this solar system. So we see how close Earth really is still to the primitive worlds and how far we really still have to go. And also in the Spiritist magazine, they have descriptions of Mars, and descriptions, Mars is primitive, and Jupiter, which is a happy world. So I'm going to read here the kind of characteristics of this world to kind of see where we came from and where we're going to. So Mars is described as driven by physical needs. Their daily life consists of eating, drinking, fighting, and mating. There is no winter or summer. One day is the same as all the others, always gray and cold. There's scarce vegetation. The volcanoes are unknown. The mountain chains are not very high, and they offer no beauty. Their view is uninspiring for exploration, and everywhere you look is monotony and violence. The passage of time is monotone. Their life is short. They have no foresight, and they kill for survival. Women play an inferior role. They're more famished, and they are nothing but females, barely having maternal feelings. They give birth with ease, without any anguish, and feed and keep the children by their side until their complete development, when they're piteously sent away. Okay, so this is an example of a very brute world, very primitive world. It's of Mars. So a spirit has described Mars as such. And now we have a description of Jupiter, which is a happy world, something for us to aspire to. The weather is always fair, far from the sun, but they are surrounded by spiritual light. The body surrounds the spirit without hold in it, like a translucent veil which covers a statue. Jupiter bodies are larger than ours and well proportioned. They have 5 hours in their day and 5 hours in their night, and their 1 day is equivalent to our 1 week. Their life expectancy is 500 years, and they have no diseases. Communication is through thought, and their job is to support and attract inferior spirits to the good path. Their diet is purely vegetarian. Man is the protector of the animals, and they have floating and flying houses. So doesn't that just blow your mind? Like, imagine living for 500 years. Imagine living in a floating house. Imagine all of these changes that, you know, that we're going to have when we go into a happy world. So I think it's super interesting. So let's go on now to regeneration. So Araldo has a video that talks about when the planet of regeneration is going to start. And he says it starts in 2057. And I really invite you to watch this video because he has so much information and he has lots of mathematical reasoning behind it. And I had to literally watch the video like 5 times to be able to go explain it to you guys. So that's how complex it is. So if you don't understand it, just go and read. I mean, go and listen to the video, but get like the summary from me. So he says that it starts in 2057, the planet of regeneration. And why? So lots of explanation here. So in the Spirits book, he says that between questions 50 and 59, it asks, when did Adam live, right? Adam and Eve, the first people, supposedly. 4,000 BC, 4,000 years before Christ. And then Jesus was 2,000 years after that. So we have 6,000 years so far. And then in the Old Testament, he says that God's one day is equivalent to our 1,000 years. Okay, 1 day, 1,000 years. God's 1 day are 1,000 years. And so therefore, 7 days is 7,000 years. That so far is easy to understand. And then in the, in Psalms 93, and also in, let me see. In the Old Testament, it says that on the 7th day, we rest, okay? So if you think about it, up until now, we've had 6,000 years or 6 days in God's time. So therefore, technically, according to the Old Testament, the 7th day or the 7,000th year, we should rest. And in the Apocalypse, chapter 20, he says that we are to have, in this time, 1,000 years of recuperation, which goes in line with the description of the world of regeneration, because it says that we are having a time to rest, right? To work more on our progress. So this really makes sense. We have 1,000 years of recuperation on the 7th day. And then he goes and says that in approximately 1831, Ismael, which is the governor of, the spiritual governor of Brazil, says that we are in the century of the promised consoler, right? Which is what? Which is pretty much Spiritism, okay? So Spiritism is coming. And in 1857, when the Spirits book comes out, is released, right? Then we are to have 200 years of prep, okay? So starting when the Spirits book comes out, it's prepping, right? Because we're learning more about the spiritual world. So it's really helping us to advance because we're knowing more about things that maybe we didn't know before. So therefore, he says that there's 200 years here, and he also, that leads until 2057, which he says that is when the year of regeneration is going to begin. And also to prove his point, Chico Xavier on Pingo Fogo, the show, he says that Emmanuel says that the world of regeneration will start around the year of 2057. So here we have 2 sources. We have Emmanuel the Spirit, and we also have Ismael saying that, hey, regeneration is going to start in 2057. So that gives us an idea that it's coming. And then Aroda goes even further, and he goes and calculates the last hour, because we hear so much that we are the workers of the last hour. But what does that really mean? When is that? So he goes and calculates that. So this is where it gets confusing. So don't worry if you don't understand. Just kind of say yes and nod your head. So we already understood that one day is equal to 1,000 years. One day of God in God's world, okay, is related to our 1,000 years. And then he says, well, what is an hour then? What is God's 60 minutes? So he divides 24 hours in our day. This is the confusing part. 24 hours in our day. He divides that into 1,000. And then he gets 42 years. So summary is, 1 hour in God's time is equivalent to 42 years in our time. So then Aroda goes and calculates, well, if the planet of regeneration starts in 2057 and I subtract 42 years, then in 2015 is when the last hour started. Again, go watch the video so you can like wrap your head around it. But the idea is the last hour, which we talk about so much, started in 2015, because the hour is really 42 years. We have these 42 years to go and do what we need to do to move on to the world of regeneration. So very, very, very interesting video, very insightful. Please go and watch it. Just go and look up Aroda regeneration. When does regeneration start? And you will find it. Highly recommend. So having that in mind, let's talk about the reincarnations right now in the last hour, the last 60 minutes that we have, 42 years. We have rebellious spirits incarnating right now that haven't been here in centuries. So some spirits have been kind of put aside so that way Earth can do its thing. Earth could evolve kind of without these spirits interrupting. But now they're having their last chance to reincarnate now. And these spirits tend to be rebellious. They tend to be aggressive, indifferent, and not really have think of something that is higher of them. Like they don't really believe in God. They don't believe in something beyond maybe this life, okay? So these kinds of spirits are incarnating right now. Their last time, 42 years, let's do it. And then, but on the good side, we also have elevated spirits who are incarnating. Crystal children are the new generation. There are spirits that come from another dimension to promote the progress of humanity. So again, there are spirits who are coming from other planets that are more advanced. They are coming right now to really help us in this last hour of our need, to help us progress and to be good examples for us. And there's a book that I said that I'm talking about, I think it's called The New Generation by Givaldo, that talks about crystal children and indigo children. I think it's so interesting to learn about these children, and they have come to develop the right side of our brains, because we've been so focused on the intellectual side. So they're really coming to help develop our intuitive, our mediumistic, and our psychic side of our brain. And they are missionaries of goodness, love, and truth. So see the power of these children incarnating right now that's really helping us advance as spirits. And let's talk a little bit more about indigo children then. Indigo children are called that because their aura is the color of indigo, and the indigo color just denotes a more elevated spirit. That's why, anyway, the color denotes that they're more elevated, and that's why they're called indigo children. And these children tend to be those ones that we see a lot right now who are a little bit different, and they're always questioning us. They don't take orders without reasoning behind them. And lots of times it seems like they know more than adults. So I know that we all have seen children like this. So those are kind of characteristics of what an indigo child would be like. And then we have crystal children who their characteristics are responsibility. They're very introspective and they're very loving. Example, some characteristics like that I just said kind of point towards an example of Akiane. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of her, probably the girl who painted this portrait of Jesus, and she painted it when she was just 8 years old. So imagine an 8-year-old painting a portrait of this depth and this profound, I mean, look at the love in Jesus's eyes. An 8-year-old painted this. So this would be an example of a possible crystal child based on this. I mean, look at this. Look at this. So these are children who are coming here and doing these amazing things. So these are the spirits who are incarnating right now. They have been for the past few decades to help God, to help Earth progress. So we talked about the planetary transition. Now let's go on to the family circle. What is the purpose of the family circle? Social ties are necessary for progress, and family ties strengthen social bonds. This is why family ties are a law of nature. God wants men and women to learn to love one another as brothers and sisters. Progress, we're going to talk about progress and God's invitation. So progress. A family is usually a needy, worn out group of spirits who have an unavoidable commitment to each other to repair past events. So we know that we have debts to spirits, to friends, to family in the past, because sometimes we do things that go against God's law. And so when we do that, we create debts with people, and then we are invited to kind of repair those debts when we are reincarnated in different families. Okay, so that's why they say that we are usually in a group, a needy, because we are in need of something maybe happened to us, something maybe, so we are invited in our family to repair some of those debts that we've created. Family is a live laboratory of experiments and training. So it's really interesting, because if you think about a lab, what are they doing? They're experimenting with different things until they find the right formula. So if you think about in our family, we are always, we face difficulties, and we try to progress, and we try to fix things, and we try to we're doing compromises and improvements until we find a balance that works. So I think it's very related to finding the right formula to make our family happy. So that's a very interesting way to think about it. We have God's invitation. So we are invited to reach perfection. That is our goal as spirits, to progress baby steps like the caterpillar to the butterfly until we reach perfection. We are happy spirits. And us being in that family is so important to our progress, because our incarnatory plan is helping us to be with maybe certain spirits to help us progress in that area that we need. I think of it like a very complex mathematical equation that the spirits, the more elevated spirits are saying, hey, Katie, go into this family and do this, because this is really going to help you on your way to progress faster. And so if we would take that to our advantage, we would progress so much faster, because we are in the family that we need, the family that's good for us to progress. So let's take advantage of that. What would be the effect on society if family ties were relaxed? It would lapse into selfishness, right? Because we need each other to progress. Imagine how you're going to progress if you're a single person out in the jungle. You're going to progress maybe in specific things, but you're not going to be able to progress morally as quickly, let's say, as you were if you were in a family ties. So very important, our family. Okay, so now I'm going to combine the planetary transition with the family, and why the family is so important in this transition that we are living right now. How can our family help us progress? Family is where the spirit awakens to the higher objectives of life. Every time the healthy family structure is disrupted, family rocks, culture degenerates, and civilization is corrupted. So this just makes me think of each house as its own unit, and there's lots of different units that create Earth, or even that create the universe. And if this family is kind of not healthy, and they're very argumentative, and they're very fighting, and they're not a healthy family, and each of the family units is the same. So we have lots of unhealthy families. These unhealthy families really represent the society as a whole. Whereas if all the families are happy and healthy families, that also represents society as a whole. So how important each family unit is for us as a whole, as a planet, really. And then let's go. Responsibilities. What are our responsibilities as a family? Parents, children, siblings. So let's talk about that. Then we're going to talk about destruction, because destruction has to do with progress. And then we're gonna have a little reflection. So responsibilities. Alberto Almeida and also Elirio, I can't say his name well, guys, so just read it for me. Elirio Secretário de Filho. They both have books that are in Portuguese, but if you translate them, they both have books called Parents and Children. And I found it very interesting that their structure of the books, the things that they're talking about in their books are very much the same. So Alberto Almeida talks about family is a system composed of 3 subsystems. Spouse-spouse relationship, we have the parent-child relationship, and we have the sibling-sibling relationship. And then very much along the same lines, Illyria goes and talks about the spousal relationship, saying how a healthy marriage is the foundation. Because imagine if you, husband and wife, you are fighting all the time and you are, I don't know, you show certain values in front of your kids that are maybe not so good. Just imagine if that's the foundation, and if that foundation is broken, how are your children going to be? So it just makes sense that the marriage is really that foundation for the children to learn the moral values. And then next we have the parent-child relationship. So the parent's responsibility, the family role of the parent is to collaborate. Because it's you and God. You are working together to help pass on those morals to your kids. You want to connect your children to God. It is our responsibility to make that connection to God and to also pass on these moral values to our children. Illyria says that parents' role is written in the conscience, just the same as God's laws are written in our conscience. So it's kind of an intuitive thing that we know that we're supposed to teach them these values. And then if you think about also the reverse role, what is the children's role to the parents? Let's say a parent did not give a child a very good upbringing, a very good childhood, didn't give them morals. Does that give the child the right to, I don't know, not love their parent, to ignore their parent, to, I don't know, not talk to them? No, it's still the child's responsibility to love their parent, because that's what we're here to do as spirits, is to love one another as sisters and brothers, no matter what the person has done to us. So it's very important that we reciprocate that. I mean, even if it's not reciprocal, it's very important for the child as well to respect their parents. And then we go on to the sibling-sibling relationship, which also applies to other relationships in our family. Let's say niece and aunt, or granddaughter and grandmother, okay? So it's for us to respect and to be kind to them, just as it is to do to all of our neighbors, right? To follow the golden rule, to love each other as brothers and sisters. And very important, we are in the family that will teach me, right? That's very important for us to remember. We're in the family that we are in for a reason. Love is the only treasure that the more we divide it, the more it multiplies. To go on to progress follows destruction. The destructive scourges do not destroy the spirit, but only the body. They accelerate the coming and going movement between the corporeal and spiritual world, and consequently the progressive movement of incarnate and discarnate spirits. It has been observed at all historical eras that great social crises have been followed by an era of progress. So let's take a look, for example, at COVID, right? COVID that's happening right now. It's destructive, right? As we all know. But let's look at the progress that it has been given us, right? We have more time to spend time with our families that maybe previously, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have enough time for them. And hopefully spending time with our families, we're getting to know them more. And also we're starting to see what we need to work on, right? Because sometimes maybe we ignore our family. It's hard to live with our family because there's so many challenges and obstacles. So right now we're given that opportunity, that chance to really progress. So this destruction of COVID is offering us this opportunity of progress. And we can also think of other movements that are happening right now, right? We have the Asian movement that's going on right now. We have the Black Lives Matter right now that's going on. And it's really helping us to develop tolerance and love and understanding towards others. It's helping us to be humble. So hopefully in these destructive times, it's also helping us to develop those values that I just mentioned of progress. We are invited to learn these values, right, of tolerance, of loving, of an understanding in our families, because kind of like a language, if you think about, you learn a language young as a kid, it's easier to speak that language. So when we learn these moral values young as a child in our family, it's so much easier to take them into the outside world and into society. Of course, we can learn them later, but it's so much important that we learn them as a young child, as the foundation really of our upbringing and of our education. And so we can see that family plays a huge role in society's advancement, because it's the role of the family and the moral values that we learn in there is the foundation that we take with us into the world, and the morals that help guide us through life. Okay, so that's very evident, at least to me, how important family is and how much they can offer us to bring into the society, and how grateful we should be for our families for teaching us values. So now let's do a little reflection and think, how do I want my family to be? Thinking that we have these families of obstacles and that we have debts with different families, so maybe we don't get along so well. But how do I want my family to be? Do I want my family to be happy? Am I working on that family? And remember, each of the family units create the society. So it's so important that I do my part in my individual family unit to try and do my role to improve my value, to improve my my, what is it called? My skills, not my skills, my whatever, to improve myself, to really improve my family, right? And then what if I've been invited to learn virtues? That's my word, virtues. We're invited to learn virtues, okay? So what have I been invited to learn in my family? So just look at the problems that you have in your family. What is bothering you? What challenges you? What gets on your nerves? That's what we got to work on. And we know it, and we can't deny what bothers us. So let's work on that and ask ourselves, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm doing something, but can we do more? Yeah, we can always do more. And we can do our part to the experiment, right? The chemistry lab. We can do our part to find the right balance to help our family progress and be happier, so that our family unit can be a good representation of the society as a whole. To be born again, die, to be born, die, and born again, and progress always. That is the law. We are subject to this law, whether we know it or not. So now I'm going to end with a poem that I wrote, followed by prayer and passing.